In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at all three of our most major models that we have: our European model, the Canadian model, and the GFS model. Really, the accuracy is usually in that order as well. So that is how it goes. It historically has been that the GFS model was the second best model, but so far this winter, um, and it looks like things will continue this way, but GFS model has taken a big falling off in the accuracy department, and the Canadian model has been right up there with the European model, and it honestly sometimes shows pretty much what the European model is actually showing. It's kind of an agreement there typically. I want to move us towards this afternoon to start things out, and you're going to feel that it is very cold here in the central and the eastern United States. The jet stream is doing something along these lines. There's a lot of cold air pouring in here to kind of the Midwest, and then also here for the Northeast. And a lot of this is making its way down the coast as well. We do have plenty of storminess here as well for the southeast and kind of deeper south areas here, even in the form of snowfall and ice here this morning for a lot of these areas, a little bit more than anticipated. That has pretty much come to an end by the time I'm recording this video, and it certainly will be by the time this video gets uploaded. By the time we reach into tonight here, or better yet, into tomorrow afternoon, we can see that there is going to be this even deeper trough. So tomorrow into Saturday is going to be the coldest air of the year so far, and I say of the year because that big Arctic blast in December was obviously in 2022. So this will be so far the coldest air of 2023 for these areas in here primarily. So we'll be watching for that as a high pressure system develops briefly over the Rockies, and this kind of just allows for a lot of this cooler air to move around, and we do see that end up happening here. And again, by Saturday, we see some of the even colder air as that's pouring straight in here to the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. Friday, it'll probably be colder out here. Saturday, you're kind of watching more of your Northeast area. And then by Sunday, we're already getting a little bit more mild with it. There is a bit of a nor'easter pretty well offshore. This could bring some wind and some waves if you happen to be at the beach here, which I'm guessing none of you will be. Perhaps you're a surfer with a, what are those things called? The bodysuits or whatever, where you can actually surf in the cold. I always thought that was a cool concept. It still seems like you'd probably pretty cold, but some of the best waves are during the wintertime, I believe. So um, that is an interesting perspective. I wonder if any of my viewers do that. Let me know if you do happen to do that. That'd be interesting. We do see a storm rise up here across the central United States, and we've seen a lot of this winter. What happens is this rises up, and as this does, it brings a warm front with it. So let's just make an imaginary warm front there, and this lets all this warm air surge here on the eastern end of the storm. It develops a cold front underneath, so usually what we see is this cold air diving in behind the storm, and this allows for severe weather to happen underneath. So south of the warm front and then east of that cold front is where we watch for severe weather. We do see this setup happen as we develop this into a 997 millibar low pressure center. We see some snowfall here for Missouri, Iowa, Wisconsin as well. Your low is right here. Again, that cold front kind of stretching underneath. You can clearly see there's a bit of a warm front here, a warm sector right there, and honestly, we would be watching for potential severe weather all throughout underneath the low. Here is primarily where I would be watching for that right around midweek next week. So that's Wednesday the 8th there. And then we can see by Thursday the 9th, we see this cold front reaching the East Coast. And we can see this far stretching this really large pocket of cold air here. Certainly going to be a potent Arctic blast again as that cold front works its way through, and it does appear like we get cold returning here to the east in a very big way. So potentially another round of very cold air right around Friday the 10th here for the east. Things look to flatten out a little bit as the jet stream's doing more like this, so potentially some pushback, some for warm air here by this point, but I could see the argument for some more cold air reinforcing its way back in. There's multiple different solutions, but I will note here that there is a 996 millibar low pressure center about to move onshore to the west, and this could pull the trough back down for the west, basically allowing for this warm air to take back over in the east. So there's multiple factors at play here. Let's take a look at the total precipitation, and this is the first frame here where I can clearly see that we are basically starting to pass the torch back here to the west, where it looks like more of this storminess in the west is going to be taking place and less of it over the deeper south here. We see some yellows and oranges, but this is definitely a little bit less than we were seeing before. So it looks like things are going to be slowing down. I'm going to do a down arrow there for kind of on a downtrend of activity. And we see things on the rise up here, especially for the Northwest of activity, according to the European model. So that is currently what we're watching for. And when we take a look at the total snowfall, this also translates to much more snowfall here and about the same amount of snowfall in the east, but we're just gonna do down arrow because it's looking very, very quiet as far as snowfall here in the east. What a surprise, right? Through the 12th of February. Now, I'm not gonna go through all the colors. I usually do that, but I feel like it takes so much time. You can look at the bottom of the screen here for the color codes, obviously the inches here at the top, and then the colors indicating the range. The 2 to 6 in the blues, purple 6 to 10. You can make it out pretty clearly. So go ahead and pause the video, find your area to figure out how much this translates to. Now, as we take a look at this GFS model, this is going to get us a little bit further. We see the cold air again on Friday into Saturday. We see that nor'easter well offshore. Then we get this rising storm across the central United States. So we get the same thing here. Excuse me. Same thing here by time reaching Thursday the 9th. This cold front here, warm front here. Again, potential severe weather out ahead of that cold front. Certainly possible Wednesday through, let's call it Friday. We do see that this turned into a deeper south kind of southeast storm that we see kind of moving across the region just like this. Reminds me of what we're seeing currently, actually, right around Saturday the 11th here. And this does translate into a bit of a snowstorm here for the Mid Atlantic on the GFS model, which again is pretty much the worst model as far as accuracy typically. Now, I mean, I'd hate to be relying on the GFS model for hope here, but we do see a low developing offshore of the Mid Atlantic. Now, I will take back every bad thing I've said about the GFS if it ends up being correct about this, but we do see a mid-Atlantic snowstorm developing, a nor'easter, and this would pretty much be the best snowstorm we've seen all season long if it occurred, even though it's more of like a moderate snowstorm at best, I would say. We do see a secondary low develop and snow kind of just lingering, and then that eventually moves out with some warmer air making its way in as we get kind of a cutter system that's come through like this and it continues kind of to rise inland there, bringing again because we see warm fronts on the end of these eastern end of things on these storms, so likely very warm air for the entire east coast on this frame. And then we basically close things out with a little bit of a trough moving in here. Now, I want to take a look at the total snowfall here. I haven't even seen it. Yeah, so this would be a decent little snowstorm here for the mid Atlantic. I'm sure everybody would take this at this point. Definitely a corridor of around 10 inches or so here in the pinks, if that was to occur. But again, if you're relying all your hope on the GFS model, that's a pretty big red flag, in my opinion. Here's the Canadian model. I want to just see what we get agreement on. Now, this nor'easter here that we see develop does bring a little bit more impacts to the actual mid-Atlantic and southeast here. I will note right around Monday the 6th. Let's get going. And then that storm that's supposed to rise up over the central United States here, this is what the European model does, or it might even be like this at least, but it's still something like that. But what we see happen here on the Canadian model is this just wants to do kind of what these storms are doing right now. So that's a big, big difference here in the models. Look at how it just, you can see kind of rises up eventually. So we see the low here. Let me get back to our yellow here. Cold front here, warm front there. So we eventually see what we're basically seeing on the European model. It's just the low is here instead of like here, which is a pretty big difference. And this brings way less chance for severe weather under here, but maybe slightly more for the southeast here if this type of a solution plays out. So that would be interesting and definitely some snowfall implications here. If we saw more of a Canadian model solution here, it looks like around the 10th or so. This would bring potential snowfall throughout portions of the Ohio Valley in the Northeast. So we'd be definitely watching for that in this type of a scenario. Obviously, stay tuned with us as we'll go over all of these things over the coming days. Here is Friday, the high temperatures, and again, we get pretty brutal cold air throughout the eastern United States, but especially in those greens and blues. And then Saturday is more of the colder day for the eastern seaboard here, but already things are on the rise throughout a lot of these areas here. So we see things really warming up for a lot of your plains, upper Midwest, Ohio Valley there. And already by time we're reaching after the weekend, it's warm. And it basically stays that way on this European ensemble model. Actually, we need to switch to the 0 Z to get any further. Have seen the models trending at about the 10th through 12th time frame being a little bit colder. We do see that here, especially in the south here on that European ensemble model. So we are getting some agreement here. I'm going to keep going and see if there's anything looking cold. Not really. We see just really cold air diving south there in the west and really warm air rising up in the east here, which would give us a jet stream pattern like this, which is a lot of what we've seen this winter. And this is what we're seeing in the long range on this European ensemble model through the 17th of February. Obviously, this can be wrong, and ensemble models tend to have some chance of doing that in the long range, where they'll eventually kind of come away from an idea like this. But only time will truly be able to tell. So tune in with us daily. We do upload every single day. Also, hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Also, like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below with your thoughts, and I will see you guys in the next video.